So, welcome everyone. This is Michelle Oliver, and we are here with the 22 Women of 2022 interview series. And I just have to say, I am so delighted to be here today with Kathleen Cunningham Guler. And this is such a random thing that we met. And I just feel like there is no true random, that everything is destiny and synchronicity. And I believe that her story is really going to help. I don't know who, I don't know how many of you, but she is an author. She is a business owner. She's a lot of things, but today we're going to talk about her books. So welcome, Kathleen. Thank you for being here with me today.
Oh, thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
Yes. And so we were meeting, Kathleen lives in Steamboat, and we were meeting for another reason. And I don't even know how. I think I just picked up this brochure on your books, which is going to look probably backwards, but I couldn't believe that you had written 4 books. And the title of this series is the Maxon's Treasure Series. And you were just starting to tell me a little bit about the series. So I think what I'd like to do, if we could, is break this into 3 different sections. I want to know a little bit about you as a writer, that story. Like, when did you start writing? How did you get interested in this? And how did you move to this point of actually publishing? Because a lot of the viewers who will be watching are women who have books inside them. They have something inside them. It could be a book, it could be a business, it could be they just want to like get in great shape or get off the couch, or it could be anything. And the purpose of these interviews is really to encourage, to inspire, and to kind of pave the way and say, look, I did this. You can do it too. This is why. This is a little bit of the how. And that's what this is all about. So maybe we could start there. When did your love of writing begin?
Oh gosh. I remember back in junior high school, which was back in the dark ages.
It was
um, um,
You're
of,
really,
of
you look
close.
like you're 40 years old. So
Oh, gee, that's very kind. I'm way
go ahead.
past that.
Yeah, I
But
know.
anyway, a dear friend of mine and I used to write little short stories for each other with our favorite TV star at the time. So it was just it was for fun. It wasn't
Mhm.
anything special, but we enjoyed that. And then I kept a journal for a long time, just daily stuff, nothing exciting there. But writing on the level of novels or anything else like that started probably about in the the early 80s, I would say. And I'd been reading historical fiction for years. My mother got me started on that. And um, I read this one book that was just, I felt was pretty lame. So in my big
Always the
ego,
inspiration to do something better, right? Every
yeah,
entrepreneur's motivation.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So with a big chunk of ego, I thought to myself, well, I could at least do this good, couldn't I? So I started experimenting and it developed from there. It took a long time, but it developed slowly.
That is really a significant point, though, that I'm going to shine a light on, because if anybody's listening to this, that what I've noticed is with everyone I interview, there's always like these little pivotal moments, right? And it
Mhm.
comes with a simple thought like that. I mean, how many of us have experienced things where we had that thought, I could do that a little bit better, or I could do that a lot better, or if they can do it, I can do it. Or how is it that that person has done this and I haven't? But very few people actually follow through on that little impulse, that little awareness. And you did it not once. I mean, you've done it hundreds of times, I'm sure, but to actually publish 4 books, you've done it a lot.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Okay, so take note, ladies, when you have that impulse, it's actually a sign that yes, you can do it.
Mhm.
Or
Yeah.
maybe that your destiny is it's your responsibility to do it. So, okay, go on. So then what happened?
Yeah. So I experimented. They had about that time, I think that was when the BBC on the PBS stations, they had the Henry VIII series, and then about Elizabeth the First, and I was
Oh,
kind of interested in that background, and I read a lot about that kind of thing, and that's where I kind of had started this, to do what I hoped was serious writing, which turned out that early stuff was not very serious, but but I'd also read Mary Stewart's Merlin trilogy, which is about the King Arthur coming into
yes.
power, and you're familiar with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll share my experience in a minute. I want to hear you first,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah. So in the back of one of those books, Mary Stewart had put one of those for further reading kind of thing, if you like the background.
Hmm.
And I thought, well, yeah, I like the background. The Dark Ages are a really interesting period. And we
Wow.
don't know a whole lot about it, but there's information out there, and there's a lot of archaeology that continues to be done in in that era. And
Hmm.
it always fascinated me. So that's where I got started with the Maxon's treasure thing, because it just was really an interesting time. And I've always been interested in history to some degree. And oddly enough, when I was going to school or college, I've been to 3 colleges, 4 colleges. A lot of what I took was background of English literature, music, art history, everything in that direction. And
Hmm.
I realized at some point all of this has a lot of history in it, and that's the thing that holds it all together. So that's
Oh, that's so fascinating. So you went to four different colleges, meaning you changed colleges or higher education?
yeah. I started out with a community college
Hmm.
in California,
Hmm.
and I have an art degree from that, which of course I never used. And and then I transferred to San Jose State, and I just didn't like the school. I didn't like San Jose, and so I
Gee, I
gave
could
up at that
understand.
point.
Yeah.
Uh, went to work, and then in the late 70s, early 80s, I went back to school, got my business degree. And when I was getting really bored with business, that's when I started writing because it was a relief from the boredom of business. So I finished that, and then about 2010, I went back and got my started to get my master's in history, and that was from an online school. So there's 4 schools involved there, but it all
Oh.
culminated with the master's degree in history.
Okay, so I got to shine another light here, if you don't mind,
Go right ahead.
because again, so the people that I've interviewed usually started a business or did something like they were in their late 40s or 50s or 60s, or even a couple of people in their 70s. And it's so interesting to me how we do discount things like an art degree, when in fact, all of that, like you said, it really does serve you and culminate. But we come from this time when, like I was the same way. I had a dance degree, a BA in dance with an undergraduate or a minor in English lit. And then I took a class that was called Camelot. And I studied for a year everything that was written around the from the back, like the early English. And to me, that was like so important. But then when you get out in the world, you realize everyone thinks that's really weird. Like, okay, you really paid to do that, like a lot of money. But all of these things come together and they make us who we are, so that your history and your art and everything informs your writing. And I know too that it informs the way you do business, which comes down to really the history of the human being, like how to interact with people. And so yeah, I'm going to congratulate you on your art degree.
Oh, thank you.
That matters. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So how did you get to a point where, I do want to talk a little bit about the content, but first of all, how did you get to a point where you knew you wanted to publish, and what was that process like? Because that process has changed, like even in the last 2 or 3 years.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's
Please.
totally different. Yeah. Yeah, I had that that first book sat in the drawer for a long time. Uh, life got in the way, as is usually said, and
Mhm.
and it was in the mid '90s I started publishing small essays and short stories and stuff like that. And that's when I started to realize I'm ready. I'm going to finish this book finally and get it, go forward with it. So that was another couple of years before it was finished, and it had been through I had an agent for a while, but she didn't do very well for me, and I ended up self-publishing it, but which has been a good experience. But that's changed now too, tremendously.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy. I mean, so this was in the 90s, you're talking early 90s,
Late '90s.
late 90s. Okay. Yeah, I mean, even I guess when would it have been? A little before that, like the early 90s, it was still that thing where you would send out one manuscript at a time. There was an etiquette to it, and
Yeah,
you would wait for like 4 months or
at
longer.
least, yeah.
And then you would get a rejection letter, and that meant it was okay to send it to another publisher. They wouldn't even look at it if you were just like, putting it out there to everyone. Now, what a different world. You can self-publish. There are many, many different platforms. And honestly, it makes more sense because, to your point with the agent, and with all due respect to big publishers, I mean, it depends on what you want to do and who you are and all of that. And if it's a novel or, what the purpose of the book is. But you still often have the bulk of responsibility for the marketing. So how did you navigate all that? I mean, you had a business degree, so you had some understanding of what that might be like.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not good at marketing, unfortunately. I think a lot of writers are not, because we want to write. We don't want to spend all that time marketing. And I put a lot of effort into it, and it did well. The books have all done well enough, but not as well as I'd like them to, because I need to market more, and I've gotten lazy about that. But that's, with the book that I'm working on now, um, I'm gearing up towards what is is more for marketing nowadays.
Mm.
That's changed too, like
Mhm.
everything else. So I'm collecting
Data.
methods of how to market. Social media has changed the whole marketing thing quite a bit.
Yes, it has. I'm actually right in the middle of this, so I will share all of my intel with you.
Oh, good.
I've been studying this for the last couple of years because it's such an ever changing, rapidly changing world. I mean, yeah, all you have to do is be on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, right? Like Facebook. I'm joking a little bit, but it kind of feels like that. It's like,
Mhm.
wow, it's so overwhelming. What is the most efficient and effective way? So, and when you pour yourself into it, and writing a book is no easy task. Um, it's a true intense commitment, right? And so
Right.
you do that, and then you're faced with this whole other world of, now you get to get it out there because nobody knows about it.
Yeah.
It's like having the best business idea in the world, and there you sit, you know, right off Main Street, and nobody bothers to go up there to see you. So,
Yeah.
okay, so you did it once and you published, right?
Mhm.
And then it was so much fun. You did it again and again
Yeah.
and again.
Yeah.
What motivated you? Is it just like the story took on a life of its own, or what?
Yeah, yeah, it was basically just that. It was gonna start out as one book, and it just like, well, these guys got more things to do, and so then came the second book, and it ended up with 4 altogether. So, then when I finished the 4th one and it was out there, it's like, I miss my characters.
Oh, that's so great. I really understand that. So what is the book you're working on now? Part of the series, or is it something?
No, the series is done. That's
Okay.
over with. I got interested in, of all things, Eurasian nomads in the like the, what is that,
Mm.
300s BC, which is totally different. And
Oh, that's so fascinating.
yeah, and I wanted to write something that had to do with different time periods, but they
Mhm.
were all related, and that's what this book does. It's I have the nomads in 339 BC. I have here comes the Dark Ages again, and another um, people in the 573 AD, and then I have a third story is in 1894 in Britain, and that was quite a challenge to get this all to be related, and it's
Oh,
related through a
wow.
piece, an artifact that was created in the first story and keeps getting found in the other 2 stories. And the last story has got a archaeologist in it, so which is logical. But
Oh,
it's
I love it. So it has a piece of history that ties it all together. And that artifact, I'm sure, carries many, many stories. So
yeah, yeah.
amazing. How far along are you with this?
It's pretty much done. It's been through the beta reader process, and I got feedback from 8 different beta readers. So there's some good suggestions there. Most of it was very positive, which I'm very pleased with, to say the
You had
least.
8 people that read your book?
Yeah, there's a service in the UK
Wow.
that you have to pay for it, but it's very minimal. And they assign people that they feel are appropriate for your story, and they all finished the thing and gave really good feedback. So I'm very happy with that. So I have a little more revising to do, and then from there I'm gonna decide, am I gonna try the traditional way, or shall I try to self-publish again? Or I think I'd like to try the traditional way this
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's time for that.
Yeah. Because you've got a foundation and a history behind you. It just makes sense.
Yeah, and
Oh,
I've
I'm
got a
so
lot of other
excited for you.
small things published, lots of articles and everything from little short stories, some poetry, some academic stuff, and just all kinds of things. So there's quite a background now that
Kathy, it's amazing. Okay, here's a question for you that I'm sure every woman who wants to write a book deals with.
Mhm.
Okay, so Kathy she's in the hospitality industry. She's been running a hotel and doing a lot of other things too. When do you write? How did you balance that? Like, this is running a business, and it's not just a business that you show up at 9 and you go home at 5. It's not like that. It's like on call, 24/7. And so how did you find time to write?
That wasn't easy. The interruptions are the worst, but,
Yeah.
it's if you're really, really inspired and you're really got your characters in your head,
Yes.
then sometimes you sit down and you write something, and then you have to go do something else, but your mind is still going with the characters,
Mhm.
and then you come back and okay, here's this idea, let's run with this, and just keep after it. And the other thing is, I belong to the local writers group here, which has been an absolute blessing. This is one of the best writers groups I've ever encountered. And
Wow.
they're very good at critiquing and telling you when your stuff is mush or if it's got potential and what's good, what's bad. And
Yeah,
sometimes when you
amazing.
listen to what they ask you or comment and you realize where you've missed the boat because of the comments, even
Mhm.
though they don't say what you've missed the boat because they're not finding what you're trying to really say.
Yeah.
That's I find that very helpful.
Oh, I love that you brought that up. That Yeah, I think writing is I mean, I'm in the middle of writing a book and I've always kind of written, but I don't consider myself a writer by any means. But there's the discounting thing again, right? But it's like a thing I have to do. And it is really, that's the crazy part about it. So I see the value of being in a group. It's just like growing a business and coaching on having a coach on for anything, having a group and being in a group, mentors, all of that, feedback, momentum, encouragement, accountability. You can't provide that for yourself. You can, but it's not as effective or efficient, and you move really slowly because you're fighting those doubts, and then you go back and you're questioning, how is it coming? You just can't see, you can't have perspective.
Mhm,
So that's another point for anyone that is watching. And I encourage people all the time to get, even if it's not with the coaching that, I mean, I have coaching groups for business, women in business, but if it's not me, find someone else, find a mentor, find a group of friends. I didn't know about this company in the UK. That's incredible. There are so many resources now
mhm,
that it
yeah,
just doesn't make sense to struggle and suffer alone.
mhm,
There's enough
yeah.
struggling and suffering you'll do anyway. So why not get in a group and have some joy and play and move a little more
Yeah,
quickly? That's amazing. That and they're in Steamboat. Who would
yeah,
think the
yeah,
best writing group that you encountered would be in Steamboat? That's amazing.
yeah,
Well, I'm sure you contribute a lot to that group.
I try. Yeah, there's
So
groups up on the internet too. I belong to a few on Facebook that have been some are helpful, some well, there's one, it's a historical writers forum, I think it's called, and they're very active, and I appreciate them. That's where I found the company in the UK with the beta readers. Someone had recommended them, and then there's others that I just they just don't do anything with. Have to pick
yeah,
and
well,
choose.
I commend you for getting on there and looking because even with all the resources there are, it's really easy to say it's too much information and it's
Mhm.
exhausting, right? Because
Right.
it's like meeting anyone or doing anything. It takes some time to connect and find the right people that are best for you. And very few people really take the initiative and the time to make that happen. So good for you for doing that, following through. Okay. Tell us a little bit about your series, would you? First of all, I don't know if I'm the only person in the world that did not know about a Maxon. That's probably everyone knows that but me. Do you want to explain what it is? in case,
Yeah.
in case there's someone else out there, because this is the Maxon's Treasure series, in case you
Yeah.
does that show up backwards?
No, it's
Oh, cool.
perfect. Yeah, Maxon was a hero to the people who became the Welsh, and he was in the 4th century, and kind of hard to explain. It's been a while since I looked at the history there, but
But
his
he was like a king. It was like, is it like a title? It's like a title, or is it a
uh,
single person?
no, Maxon was the person. That's his
Oh,
name.
got it. No wonder I didn't know
I
him.
think he was also called Maximus by the Romans. This was
Oh,
in the Roman period,
okay.
and
Yes, got it.
because he became a hero to the people of that western part of Britain, where Wales is now. Um, he in a fictional way, I've assigned this treasure to his name, and the treasure is like there's a thing called a torque. It's a neck ring that high ranking people would wear in the nobility or the aristocracy.
Mhm.
There was a special sword. There was I'm trying to remember this now. It's been a while since I looked at
Yeah,
this.
I know. You
So
don't have to tell all the
yeah,
details, but I
yeah,
get it. Okay.
yeah,
So there were a number of items, right?
yeah. There would be one in for each book that the book is centered on. And the
So
first one,
let me tell the title. So Into the Path of Gods is the first one, right?
right?
And
Yeah,
that's where the I'm going to call it a necklace, of course, being me. That's where the necklace was.
yeah,
And then In the Shadow of Dragons was second, or was Anvil
yeah.
Stone?
That was the
Okay,
second. There's a poem
that's
inside
amazing.
here that explains it. I should have looked at this earlier.
Oh, read it to us. Is it long?
Yeah. It's a page long. So, well, okay, here we go. In the first book is about the torque, which is a neck ring. Um, Second one has a spear. The third book has a sword, and the fourth one has the grail. And everybody looks for the holy grail, so to speak.
Yes. Yeah.
That's This is where in my research, because so much of the old ways, the Celtic ways, and the pagan ways of the before the Romans brought Christianity in, they had all these kind of symbols.
Hmm.
And then when Christianity came in, it kind of took those symbols and used them for themselves. So of course now they say the Holy Grail is the Grail from Jesus and all that stuff. But in my opinion, humble as it is, the Grail
Oh,
belonged to the ancient kings before there was any Christianity. So that's where these things come from. Um, they're symbols of kingship in the very old times, in the Dark Ages.
oh, fascinating.
Yeah. So with each book, there's a quest to find that one of these symbols. So, and of course, the
It's
sword
so,
is going to be Excalibur.
yeah. It's really fascinating. We grow up with this really shallow textbook understanding of history. And if you don't take the initiative or have the interest to dig deeper, excuse me, you don't know. Like you just live from that basis and make all of your decisions or your understanding or whatever. So really interesting. Excuse me, so sorry. Okay, so the other thing that you were talking about in here that I think applies to all of these women in their quest, because everyone is in this quest. And as you were speaking, I was just thinking it's funny how women tend to be like, okay, my life started at this age, and then these are the things that I've done. And and then those things are over. Like I can't really go back and like dig them up, like dig up those treasures and blow the dust off. And honestly, that's what this series is really about. So I think it kind of fits into your storyline as an analogy. It's really so important to go back and question, wow, this thing, this holy grail, what is that? like in my
Mhm.
my own holy grail in my life. What is that? And
Uh-huh.
where did it really come from? Like, is because most often the holy grail in any of these women's lives is something that people said, it's not a holy grail. Okay. Bury that thing. What are you going to do with an art degree or a dance degree or a musical theater degree? Or what are you doing? Why you stay in corporate or whatever the thing is? It comes in a, legion, like anything you imagine. And yet there's something inside of everyone like that holy grail that really deserves to be dusted off, and you have to be that archaeologist, right? So look what you're doing now, and it is never, never, never too late to do anything that you want to do. I mean, why would we limit ourselves in that way? That is my message to everyone that's watching. Quit saying, I'm too old, or it's not good enough, or like, why do we do that to ourselves? Let's just stop and take the action. And look what Kathy is doing now. She's not actually 40. She's older than 40.
A lot older.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't even know why we're so weird about it. Like, I don't even talk about age because it's like, this is how what I have plastered all over social media is I just don't measure my life in years, but by experiences. And then I go have the ones I want to have. Like, go make it happen,
Yeah.
and don't do it alone. So if you were doing this alone without a group, what would that be like?
I think it'd be a lot harder. I think I would get off track. I know there was one of those 4 books I started, and I tossed out the first 7 chapters because it's like, where am I going with this? I have to stay within the framework of history. So I think it would be the same thing if you don't have a support group to help with things, that you, you get off track pretty easy. So you have to keep the, what do they say, the eyes on the prize. But,
Keep the
but the
eye.
prize is really the journey, not just the end thing, because there's always more. There's always more.
I love that. Talk a little bit more about that, would you? About the
Oh,
journey,
the
enjoying
journey.
the journey.
Yeah, the journey. It's in a way that sounds like a cliche that, the thing is the journey, not the destination, but really the journey is your life. And just keep going. Sometimes you trudge through the mud, and sometimes you're flying along just really good, and everything in between. But that's just the way life is. I don't
Yeah.
can't add too much to that.
Yeah. Well, every cliche is a cliche for a reason, because it's usually
Mhm.
the truth, right?
Yeah.
And sorry, I keep coughing, everyone. But so around this though, everything, I think we can, what I've noticed, at least with women, is that we tend to separate things. Like, we are able to have a bird's eye view and manage all these things, like children and husbands and businesses and cooking and cleaning, and then we have our secret art in the background
Yes.
that we would literally just die without, right? It feeds
Yeah.
us, it feeds us. And yet that's always the thing that gets pushed off to the side. So now, as women get older, hopefully there's a little bit more space for doing those things and paying attention to that thing inside of you that is just still there. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't go away because another year passed. It
Mhm.
doesn't go away because of anything. Like, until it's actually fulfilled, It's really our responsibility to do it. And no one is ever going to come along and say, now it's time for you to do this. You have to kind of parent yourself around that, right? And
Yeah.
believe in yourself. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's like everybody makes these New Year's resolutions. And
yeah.
just because it's New Year's, and it's like,
Yeah.
no, you have to take it when you're inspired. Go for it then. Because if you just depend on a date to start something, it doesn't work. You never stick with it. So you have to catch the inspiration when it comes and just follow it.
That's a really significant statement. Catch the inspiration when it comes and follow it, because that's everything. And
Yeah.
what's interesting about that too is it comes again. I know I mentioned this earlier, but it comes in little bits. It almost teases you,
Mhm.
right? It's
Yeah.
like, here's this thing coming into your awareness, and you either give it value or you discount it. And nobody can do that except for you. Like, you have
Mhm.
to say, wait a second, this is something, and I'm going to appreciate it and give it time and attention and nurture it, and not just blow it off. There are a million reasons to blow off these moments of inspiration, because most often they aren't practical, like from the worldview, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think going back to talking about age, um, when you hit a certain point in your life too, you have the wisdom to recognize what works and what doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And um, I notice when after I passed 60, I was starting to slow down. Your brain slows down, everything slows down, but if you catch on to something and run with it, then it's better than if you tried to do it when you're 20 and you're scattered and everything's all over the place. So I think age is a good thing. And
I agree. What's funny too is when you said everything slows down. Um, it's really, it's more like you step more into your, well, I call it like sovereignty or agency, because a master of anything doesn't have to run around everywhere like trying to make it all work like you are in your 20s. Like, should I go out with this guy? Should I go in this direction? Should I go to this college? I mean, you're just like, right? And
yeah.
then it's like that for a long time,
Mhm.
because then you might get married and have children, and then your world is like, whoa, I didn't know. You can't anticipate any new stage. But then when you get to this one area, it's like wisdom really is the ability to have that kind of perspective, and you're not wasting energy. So I would argue that it's not really that we don't have energy. It's more that we are better masters of our energy. Like, we know we're not going to waste energy doing foolish things.
Yeah.
It's like, why would I do that? So, and honestly, reflection and quiet time. And a lot of people are coming more into this understanding that, like, meditation and calm, or whatever you want to call it, from, if you're religious, prayer, whatever, is really where you need to start, like being centered and having clarity and calm. Um, so I think that that's a distinct advantage, and no one has ever brought that up before. So yes, it's wisdom.
Yeah.
Now there's nothing to say. Now,
I think my brain is slowing down now.
now, Kathy, you are such an inspiration to me, and definitely to everyone who is watching this. There's a whole nother backstory on what she built over the course of her life, but this is what we're focusing on today. And so I hope you all will go out. I'm going to put your information like in the description box so people can go after this, and you can find these on Amazon. I can't get it held just right, or on your website, but I'll put all the description in the box. Okay.
Okay.
And can they connect with you like on social media? Do you have any social pages for your books yet? You will when the new one comes out, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm on Facebook mainly. I gave up on Twitter. It's too much of a
Wow.
zoo.
Yeah.
But I am on Facebook, and I do have a page for Maxon's Treasure, which I'm
Okay.
probably going to convert to a like an author page eventually. I don't know when I'm going to do that, but that's where I am. So, and I have my own website there. And that's on that should be on that card too.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's on here, and
Yeah.
it's KathleenGuler.com.
Yeah. Yeah.
Guler, KATHLEENGULER, right? Guler. Just
Right.
like it sounds. Ruler with a G.
Yeah.
.com. So I'll put all of that so they can just link to that if anyone wants to check it out. But I'm just so delighted that we met. It's just been wonderful, and I look forward to your book coming out. Is there like how do you understand timelines on that? You have to now go out and have like you have to find an agent and go through all of that. I was
Yeah.
about to call it rigmarole, but I'm going to call it that opportunity. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm probably gonna try first I'm gonna try finding an agent. Um, there's quite a few publishers that will look at manuscripts without an agent, some of the smaller publishers, and I'll try some of those too. And if I get desperate, then I'll go back to self-publishing. But I'd like to see if I can get an outside publisher now.
Yeah, it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, you will, and it will be published, and I'm really excited to read it. I have to read these first, and so I can't wait. And then we'll have you back, and you can talk about your new book. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here, and we'll talk again really soon.
All
Thank you,
right.
Kathy.
Thank you very much.